Chihu Naitsia, and welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is Chinese for riding a tiger, difficult to get off, which I think applies pretty well here to Liam Lawson these days. I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
I am doing fantastic. And also that second Red Bull seat is kind of like, lambs to the slaughter, which I guess you could get a lion to eat a lamb. That'd be an interesting way to slaughter a lamb. Maybe that's what they're doing.
Maybe. Also joining us, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
Not bad. I feel like there's something you could do with like the Lady and the Tiger with the second Red Bull seat, where it's like you could be safe and like stay at Racing Bulls, but like maybe there's a tiger behind. Again, I'm workshopping it.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. If you are new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode. It assumes no prior F1 knowledge or really any motorsport knowledge at all.
Any knowledge whatsoever.
That's right. We teach you the words.
Yep. Get your babies on there.
If you were like severed and you like woke up on the severance floor and you're like, I don't know anything. We have a primer podcast about Formula One that I think can get you off on the right footing.
That's right. It's episode 298 if you'd like to go back and listen to that. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release ad-free versions of the podcast early, many hours early.
Several.
Along with bonus podcasts and videos that are exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What's going on this month in Patreon land, Danny?
Well, it's the final week of our deal, that is. Multi-21, Drew. Multi-21. If you want 90% off your first month on Patreon, Shift F1's Patreon, go over right now. You've got 90% off. And if you want to type in Multi-21 somewhere, you can, but it seems like most people are able to just do it, and because it's just automatically there. So that's a shame. But anyway, I got to make a fun Red Bull pun. Also 8% off for the year if you want to go annual. We are doing a Drive to Survive review this month. It should be up in the next couple of days. We're doing episodes 1 through 5. The first half of Drive to Survive season 7.
Oh my God.
My lord. It feels like, it was like a new fresh thing we were unwrapping, but we've unwrapped it now several times.
MK had a moment this weekend where she was like, wait, how long did they say Gasly's been in F1? I thought he was kind of one of the new guys. And I watched what's happened to me many times over the years of watching F1 happen to her, where it's like, no, that guy just started.
Is there anyone in the Drive to Survive era? I guess there has been a few drivers who we have had enter and exit the sport. I know there's been fast ones like Nick DeVries and stuff like that, but is there anyone that was had 5 or 6 seasons?
like an actual F1 career?
Exactly.
Who you see happen on Drive to Survive? That's a good question.
It is a good question.
I feel Ocon is like almost the one, but he's
he might be. He might be the one.
He might,
because I don't think
he's
he's
still
in
here.
season 1.
Well, that's the thing. But he's still around. So,
and I think he will be. I think Drive to Survive will still be going when he is no longer around.
Yeah.
So 7 years. So that's what, 2018 was that the first season?
I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know math.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
It's 7 in the morning. Don't be asking me to add basic numbers. I can barely say basic names, like the names of our incredible title sponsors, Matt and Harmony. I have priors on that one. I literally could not say that one before. Deange, it's a me, Ferrari. Get rich, die Ryan. Another one that I frequently said incorrectly. Why do I have this part of the podcast? I'm bad at it. Agave ATX, Cyphers Training, Turf SES, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Cigarettes, Olivia Evans, TelemetryTech.com. So we need to get the over-under on how long we're going to be laughing at cigarettes, because it is very funny, and it comes out of nowhere. TelemetryTech.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foote, Jason Chadwick is back, Abraham Getchell, Bunny F1N, Snigs, Alex Couchet, Max Valtar, Jeff Foster, Troy Stammer, William Romph, Lachlan the Maddened Man, Samurai Love Story, and Jason Kelly. Thank you all so much for slapping your beautiful names all over the great car Shift F1.
Here's some 2018 names for you. Ready?
Okay.
Sergei Sirotkin.
Oh, boy.
Whoa.
Boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Brendan Hartley.
Oh, man. Brendan Hartley. He was only in for that
Ericsson.
year, though, wasn't he? Oh, yeah. Ericsson, I guess.
Okay, so
good
wait,
old-
so yeah.
Stoffel Van Dorn.
Unstoppable.
Didn't have a, I would say he falls out of contention because he didn't have a full career. Also, he'd been there before.
He
I
had,
think
yeah.
Stoffel was there.
Sorry,
he
these are
started
not
before. Yeah.
These are not ones that started here. Just some old names for
Just remembering
the,
some
the
guys.
heads.
Yeah.
Roman Grosjean, of course. Who could
Of course.
forget?
The Phoenix.
Kevin Magnussen, Sergio Perez, Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas. Kimi Räikkönen was racing 2018,
Absolutely.
and Sebastian Vettel.
God, it's weird how Vettel is actually one of the ones who's been gone the longest.
Yeah.
Did we only get, there was one season where there was no Kimi on the grid, right? But only one.
Yeah,
Maybe two?
He was gone for a while.
Well,
You're saying with no Kimi.
When did he leave? When did he depart Alfa Romeo Sauber?
Let me tell you right now.
This is the other problem with Formula One is that often you instantly forget about these drivers once you stop seeing them every week.
I have no idea. I think there's like people. There are some people who have a brain for sport. That
Yeah,
like
my
if
brother
you can remember like an exact match or
Yes.
sequence from like, years later. Oh well, so that game that was very important because you know where they were in fourth place on the table, but if they won, they were going to. And I'm like, 1 week later, after the greatest match or race of my life,
Yes.
I cannot tell you with a gun
Yeah.
on me.
Same.
Totally.
Any details.
He went. He was in Ferrari at 2009, and then went out of the sport until 2012 when he came back with Lotus, and then was in the sport until 2021. Last 3 seasons with Alfa Romeo.
What a second stint. You'd think that like having one of those sports brains would be a prerequisite to having a Formula One podcast, but yet here we are. So
Well, we're video games people.
exactly, we have attention.
If we were
spans
better
that
at
last
sports, we'd be
5
doing
seconds.
that.
Well, speaking of this sport that we are talking about, there is a lot to talk about.
there is,
so
yes.
let's get to this. This is our first sprint race weekend of the year. So let's get
It's
right
the
to it.
first sprint weekend. You can do it to anything. It's
pretty
incredible.
good.
There's gonna be one more coming.
We're gonna have to pay
listen
royalties to Europe.
It's the sprint
right.
grid order.
It's just 4 beats. It works perfectly with anything. I need
it's
to
an
take a
Anchorman reference.
In celebration of Kimi Räikkönen, of course. Sorry.
That's right. Lewis Hamilton on sprint pole, whatever we're calling that. Big
Yeah.
surprise from even him. A lot of Hamilton fans in China. there
Yeah,
to
because
watch him.
that main stand has just got 44s written all over it.
Yeah.
Great pole. Bit of wobbles from both McLarens though. They were having trouble, and obviously we're down 2 practice sessions this weekend. So
That's right.
anyone who's got problems is probably going to keep having problems into quali.
Yeah. Max Verstappen in second by only 18 thousandths of a second. F1 actually has a cool video on their YouTube channel with like a video game ghost car
Yeah,
of the qualifying lap. Have they done that before?
I don't think so.
I think it's
they've,
new.
They've done comparison ones before, but I don't think they've done the
They've done
one
like the
video
side-by-side.
overlay. Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, the overlay. Yeah, it's really cool. Oscar Piastri third, Charles Leclerc fourth, George Russell fifth, Lando Norris in sixth. Danny, as you said, he aborted his final lap after he went off at the hairpin.
Yeah.
Then we've got Kimi Antonelli in seventh, Yuki Tsunoda eighth, Alex Albon ninth, Lance Stroll 10th. Then behind them, Alonso, Behrman, Sainz, Bortoleto, Hadjar, Doohan, Gasly, Ocon, Lawson, and Hulkenberg.
So the
Danny, you wanna
second
take
Red
us
Bull
through?
in 19th.
That's right. You want to take us through the start of the sprint, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, by the time they got to turn 5, the top 5 were in the same order, but it was largely down to Hamilton making having a good start and then making a fairly sharp defensive move over to the right side of the track before they got to turn 1, so that Max couldn't sort of eke into that part of the turn. So it felt very 2021. You know, I was
I
like,
think
oh, I
the-
remember that.
I think, but in 2021 they would have hit. Like, and to be fair, it's early days, but I was also heart and mouth because these guys haven't really raced each other in anger since 21. Like, they're like, the cars were so mismatched that there were times that, yes, like, they were fighting for position. Lewis would be up in a position, but like, the Red Bull had such an advantage that he was kind of not going to fight these things very hard. This is the first time where I was like, there's stakes here. And again, Lewis has been very clear he races Max differently. And that was a pretty severe cutting off of the way.
Yes.
For Lewis as they race down the car park ramp.
Although both of them are in cars that they are thinking going into this race are not going to be able to keep the pace with the McLaren. So maybe they're also like mutually assured safety here to get around.
And also like the worst thing you can do to your crew is like wreck the car. Like that's the real stress.
Especially on a sprint
weekend.
Sprint
is that you could destroy qualifying and like you still have your crew like working overnight.
The biggest incident that happened on the lap, which I think was turn 5, I forget the numbers of the turns on the inside section there, in sector 2, was Lando Norris just taking an edge. He got too far out on the gravel, lost traction, hit the runoff, and he slipped down into, I think it was 9th position, which was obviously not ideal for him.
I think he got some criticism for that. My feeling was also, though, he was really trying to keep his car out of trouble. Like he was vulnerable. It was not sort of iconic Lando Norris start in some ways, but like I don't think he was confident that he knew where the cars around him were.
Yeah.
Russell was squeezing him pretty hard, I think, at that moment. There's a lot of traffic around him, so I think he kind of got stuck on the outside and took the hard road over the curb.
Yeah. Another first lap move, Russell dives down the inside of Leclerc at the hairpin for 4th place. This is, one of the things that is interesting about the sprint. Teams that maybe don't have great race pace, I'm not saying that Mercedes is one of those because we'll get to that. But, Hamilton out there in front, Russell making moves. Like you just see different kinds of moves in the sprint because there's just less race to last. Lawson tries the same thing, but bangs into Doohan and does manage to get past. Does it again on Ocon, this time avoiding contact, and gets up into 17th place. Lap 10, Hadjar gets by Gasly for 14th at the hairpin. Gasly then fights back through that first corner complex and retakes the position, but nice to see Hadjar making moves and keeping it clean. Gasly then gets by Sainz at the hairpin on the next lap, and as you'll recall, it's only the top 8 that score points in a sprint. Hadjar follows a lap later, and then Lawson. So Sainz potentially having a problem with this car, and indeed Williams soon pit him. Lap 15 is when things kind of kick up a bit. Piastri having closed to within half a second of Verstappen. Piastri pulls out from behind with DRS, heading into the hairpin, and goes up the inside. Verstappen kind of unable to do anything about it. Lap 17.
At this stage, we're having like there was a bit of a front lefts are everyone. Nobody's happy. they're grading pretty hard, but it's a case of like who sort of maybe manage their tires a little bit easier or which cars will let them. But yeah, for a little moment there, it seemed pretty shaky.
Oh man, you're just reminding me. Last night I dreamed about describing tire graining to someone.
Wow,
was this a sex dream? What podcast does to you?
This is a sex dream, wasn't it?
It was like to my mother, but we were both naked, and then I was explaining I don't know, it probably doesn't mean anything.
17, Gasly gets around Behrman around the outside of turn 1 and 2. Gasly, the one of the few drivers here making these things interesting this weekend. Final lap, Leclerc harassing Russell, but can't get it done, has to settle for 5th. But Hamilton holds on to win the sprint. Also on the last lap, Doohan went for a move on Bortoleto at the hairpin and spun him instead. So the first of his 4 penalty points onto his license, I think, is come right there.
Which you don't want to see necessarily. These guys not finishing races, but they were wildly out of the points, and it's a sprint weekend, so
scrap it out. I think it's been so long since we've seen like this many rookies on track at once, and I think. Yeah. I try to be wary of the tendency where we expect these guys to show up as like fully polished and prepared. Like, this is kind of what you sign up for when you're bringing rookies onto the track and throwing them together with other rookies. This is a good low stakes place to have these battles play out. I like it.
Yeah, good point. Lewis Hamilton wins the sprint. Oscar Piastri moves up a spot into second, and Max Verstappen moves down to third. George Russell moves up to fourth. Charles Leclerc down to fifth. Yuki Tsunoda up 2 spots from the start into sixth. Then we've got Kimi Antonelli holding on to seventh place, and Lando Norris dropping 2 to that last points-paying position in eighth. Then we've got Stroll, Alonso, Albon, Gasly, Hadjar, Lawson up 5. Gasly also up 5, which is impressive in a sprint, you know.
Yeah.
Behrman in 15th, then Ocon, Sainz, Bortoleto, Hulkenberg, and Doohan.
So, Lewis Hamilton, like, is this his first win as a Ferrari driver? I think we can count it. Like, it's not a Grand Prix win, but
it's the first sprint win. Yeah,
He seemed excited. Ferrari seemed excited.
It's exciting. Like, it is. I think it's good also that it clears some of the drama away. Like how's this going to work out? Is he going to be a bust? That clearly seems to have been on their mind, where they were talking about how his comms with Adami were overanalyzed, that there was way too much, being pulled out of that one race result, which I basically agree with. It was Australia was a very standard week, day at the office for Lewis and whoever his engineer is. And I think this week it's like, and then sometimes it goes really well. And I think it maybe is also reassuring that the nature of the sprint, teams that maybe have a little like better intuition about just how to set up the car, but haven't had time to get the data to iron out like the optimal setup,
right,
have an advantage. Like, here you had Ferrari and Lewis together sort of arrive at like fastest pace for the sprint race, and then kind of true pace is revealed in the Grand Prix qualifying afterwards. But for this first outing, you kind of get the sense that like, oh yeah, okay, he still got it. He still has that touch. Ferrari, can set up a car. They just don't have something maybe on par with like the McLaren or the Mercedes.
And I think there's another saving grace of at least like you didn't have a situation where the McLarens just instantly started eating these cars up. It's not that, you know what I mean? And maybe this had something to do as well with China's an interesting track because the DRS. The back straight here is super long, and it has a very long DRS straight, and they have over the years sort of tweaked how long it is, and it's a little bit shorter than it has been, I believe, recently.
I think they lengthened it actually for this race.
I think they had shortened it before, and then they re-lengthened it. I think it's like...
How are they adjusting the length of it? Because, like, the hairpin is kind of fixed in relation to the...
adjusting the length of the DRS zone.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so just where the flap can open, basically.
Yeah.
I'll have to. I'm pretty sure it's not the longest it's been, but also last year we had something crazy. Was it like the highest amount of non-DRS overtakes in the circuit last year across all of them? So it has the potential to do it, but we didn't see crazy amounts of overtaking. Granted, it's a sprint weekend, but also just I think it just shows you how condensed the pack is and how stuff like temperature and track style is making an impression on who's dominant, weekend after weekend, at least a couple of weekends in.
Well, speaking of dominance, on pole for the first time in his career, Oscar Piastri. He said after he was told P1, I just had a little scream in my helmet.
Wow. The hairpin of his life. I think he explained it to a Karun afterwards. That he was actually 0.2 down on the then pole pace, the purple pace for the session when he started that lap, which 0.2 down in the first sector, usually you're basically hosed. But he just did a Jesus take the wheel through that final hairpin that clawed back a bunch of the time.
That's where Lando lost it as well. So, it just shows you how important that hairpin is, I guess, if you want to be legend right at the end.
Well, there's the hairpin, and then there's like as you accelerate back onto the start finish straight, you get that left hand, and that thing tempts you. Like, it's a lot like the Wall of Champions in Montreal.
Yeah.
You can go pretty fast, but the margin for error is actually razor thin between like legend or loser.
And you lose a lap. A lot of people lose a lap because they cross over the racing line there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as you said.
I don't know anyone who's crashed there. I think.
Oh no, there's been
Albon.
big crashes.
Yeah.
I swear, I can see a car confettiing as it like goes. I can't remember who it was though, but somebody has definitely like gone too far out to the right and absolutely exploded the car. What? Ooh, was it
I don't know who.
Latifi?
I don't think I remember.
I have a
anyone
vision
that-
of a Williams like spinning down the straight.
I think I had one of
pretty good
Albon
guess.
who caught it and went the other way, went to the inside of the track, but I don't know. Who knows?
As you said, Danny, Lando Norris messed up on his last lap. He did bail out of that final lap. And interestingly, the track was really improving with every subsequent lap in both sprint and race qualifying until the final laps of Q3. And it didn't seem to be yielding as much time as it had to other racers. But yeah, Norris will start third. George Russell will start second. And then Verstappen in fourth, followed by Hamilton in fifth, Leclerc in sixth, Isaac Hadjar in seventh. Racing Bulls did get a €5,000 fine for releasing Hadjar into the path of Verstappen in the
Oh,
pits.
they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a bad one.
Kimi Antonelli in eighth, Yuki Tsunoda in ninth, and Alex Albon will start 10th. Then we've got Ocon, Hulkenberg, Alonso, Stroll, Sainz in 15th, Gasly, Behrman, Doohan, Bortoletto, and Lawson in 20th.
So, for the other race, I gotta tell y'all, I watched quali and the race with the new and improved F1 TV app.
Oh, okay. Is this a sponsored bit or are we?
Hashtag no ad.
We should, but except we decided we don't want F1 to know we exist, right? We kind of
That's right.
like decided it was probably safer that way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Makes us cooler,
no,
too.
so they were tempting us with the 4K resolution.
Yeah.
The bit rate. The bit rate's fine. Like I do not think that, I'm not sure they have 4K cameras there, right? So it's like you're getting.
I'll bet they do, but yeah.
As I understand, actually getting like 4K HDR data off a camera requires like a lot of infrastructure. This is why the Digital Trends has a good piece about this. The NFL doesn't want to do it because the cables are so much fatter that the trucks, you need like 3 times the trucks to like rig a stadium for a 4K broadcast because just the cable runs become like prohibitive. Anyway. So like the visuals are better. Like it blows the doors off like YouTube TV's feed off ESPN. ESPN always has garbage like image quality on cable. They are just absolutely terrible with that. But here's the thing. So they now have multi-view built in on the Apple version of the app.
And this is the Pro tier, right? Or this is what's the one above Pro?
Premium now? It's
Pro, premium. It's 120 for the year, I think. It is. You can't get it on a lot of Android devices, but that's because Android devices ain't running this shit. Like this is.
Well, sort of. No. So the thing is, like, I do sympathize with. This is like one of the reasons I got put. I sort of ended up becoming sort of Apple pilled as well. If you're not running Apple, like, there's so many things that you're like a second class citizen as far as like app support. Where there's no reason you couldn't have a Windows app that does some of this shit, right? Like that is there in the Xbox app, or they just don't. These sort of feature rich things don't tend to exist outside like
sometimes
the
like the
Apple version of
PlayStation. I think there's no PlayStation F1 app, for instance. It's like sometimes it's like, oh, there's no point in developing this thing because there's not enough people doing it. But I think in the case of some Android devices, obviously not the phones necessarily, but like stuff like Roku's and like televisions that have apps on it, like they are going to struggle with this stuff. Like I have a television I use a bunch of those like built-in apps on, and anyone that's like pushing the boundaries a little bit, it starts to, it's not a good time.
But if you do have, say, the Apple TV 4K thing hooked up to your TV to sort of serve as its OS, guys, it rules. Like to the point where I'm not watching a race without this at this point, because what it does, the way it works is like you swipe left with your thumb during the broadcast, and it pulls all the other feeds, all the in-cars that like tiles out into the right-hand third of the screen. And you can pick like pull up data, pull up track, and then you choose like what visual layout you want on the screen, and then you tab back, like it fills, and now you can like have the main feed, track map, and the data table like all there on the screen simultaneously. And the way that like lets you keep track of the state of play, the fact that you can always know exactly what corner guys are in now, just like eyes darting between the two fields. Like, this is the only way I want to watch races now. And it actually kills me that, like, I can't do this same thing for, like, an endurance race where I think it would be a godsend to have this kind of thing. Or there's a point where they were cutting away from, in the sprint, they were cutting away from Antonelli trying to run down Tsunoda. They just kind of lost interest in that. So I wanted to follow it though, so I just popped to the in-car and had that up in one of the quadrants while I was watching the rest of the race. It is a fantastic way of showcasing all this data. It makes qualifying more interesting because you have the data track and you can sort of see corner segment by segment.
Yeah, I loved that. I was having that really changed quali for me because you could see how people were doing, like, in the subsectors or whatever.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much fun data there is now in this, and they made it really easy to surface. Like, you don't have to sit there with like the app open on your TV and then also on your phone and maybe an iPad. Like, it can all just live there, like up on the screen.
Although the Shift F1 Discord, like images of people watching the race have just gotten crazier now. Because you just have people with like multi-view happening on their screen and on their iPad and on their laptop and on their phone and everything. It's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, we were sitting there and like MK was like, we could have a bigger screen.
Yeah.
This would be a little easier. I wish I could read the data screen a little more easily.
Maybe we should push this couch a little bit closer.
Yeah. So there was definitely a little bit of that, and I could easily imagine going full sicko mode where like, why not have a multi-view of your favorite drivers, all their in-cars up simultaneously? It's really cool though, and it is like the equivalent of in football having the all 22 camera, where you can just like see the entire like state of play all at once. Really helpful for instance, if you plan on having to talk about a race in a little more detail later on afterwards. Makes it a lot easier to look up and be like, hey, what's happening there? And you can sort of see exactly what's going on.
Okay, great. Well, maybe I can get Shift F1 to pay for it. I was watching at my buddy Brian's house, and he had this setup as well. And I noticed that when we would change an input for the picture-in-picture, it would swap back to the official F1 audio and not the Sky audio.
Yeah.
Were you having that problem too?
It's a little bit weird because it has the feed, the international video feed, and is like decoupled sometimes from the audio because you can change the audio in the audio settings.
Right.
You know, the global audio settings at the bottom. So you have to keep your eye on that a little bit.
Okay. Well, all right. I might check that out, especially if I could get like what I want, and I think it does this. Brian was saying that it did, to synchronize like my laptop with what I'm watching, so that I could have the data there and not have to take up screen real estate. Do you know if that happens?
Oh yeah.
You can do that.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get to this race. Danny, you want to take us through the start?
Yeah, sure. Similar sort of, what's going to happen on the race rundown. It's not the longest rundown to the first turn here, but it's a similar situation where the drivers are making sure that inside line is not necessarily if it's where place 2 starts, so that's Russell in this case. And it's something you have to defend against. There was a support race. There wasn't many support races on. I must have been a local one because the only one that was televised was F1 Academy that had 2 races here, which were good fun. I watched them with my daughter. It was a nice way to try and get her into this stuff. We picked the drivers we liked. We watched through it. The first race was a bit safety car heavy, and the second one was a bit more interesting. But it was in one of the support races, somebody had spilled some oil, so the inside of the straight here was covered in the chalk and dust that they put down to try and soak that stuff up. So whether or not that hindered Russell or not quite sure, because he had a decent start. He pulled up side by side with Piastri, but Piastri sort of aggressively defended it. Russell decided he needed to pull out before they went into that turn. It's kind of not a turn you want to be hitting the apex incorrectly on, because it's going to make you suffer the whole way through down into the exit of turn 2. And as it happened, when you're defending against one McLaren and the second one is in third position, you're probably in trouble. And the second McLaren did manage to get around Russell, and I think Lando was in second by the exit of turn 2.
The outside lane proved effective for Norris, but not Verstappen, who kind of loses out to Hamilton and Leclerc, sliding into 6th after that opening complex of turns. Antonelli also took a dive at Verstappen, but Max did manage to fend that one off. Leclerc got past Verstappen, but while doing so, took a lot of curb and bounced into Hamilton, and that took off the end plate of his own Leclerc's front wing. Didn't seem to slow him down very much, though.
Genius move.
Are we buying the theory that they developed that by breaking the end plate off, it now was a non-compliant front wing and had the reflection that was actually advantageous? Do we buy the theory that actually the end plate prevents the wing from doing its front wingiest things, and Leclerc suddenly had bonus front end grip because that thing was just it was just going where the air was.
Well, and less drag, right? Because it would flex at high speed. Okay.
They were talking about him maybe getting a meatball flag for this one. Come into the pits and replace it because it's dangerous. But, all you need to not get the meatball is like 1 or 2 laps of nothing falling off your car. And then they're like, yeah, you're fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, the commentators were saying that basically, like, Ferrari engineers are going to the stewards and saying, like, look at the blueprints here. It's impossible for the wing to come off.
Right.
Maybe not as successful with Tsunoda, which we'll get to. Lap 4, Gasly reporting that Alonso's brakes are on fire, and indeed, Alonso does have smoke coming out the back. He pits to retire.
Such tattletales in F1.
I know. Lap 8,
maybe my
favorite.
On fire. Yeah.
Maybe my favorite radio of the race is from Albon here. Granted, this is in the context of tire life, but he says, I'm good. I'm better than everyone.
Wow, love it. That's the confidence we like to see, Alexander.
That's right. So at this point, the race is really kind of boiling down to, are people going to go for a 1-stop or a 2-stop? A 2-stop will mean that you spend more time changing your tires in the pits, but those tires would theoretically allow you to go faster. The hard tires here were totally untested because since each driver only has 2 sets during this weekend, no one wanted to run them in previous sessions.
Didn't they also say this is a reformulated C2 tire? This is not the same C2 they've run in previous years.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
I want to say they said like Pirelli had tweaked some of the compounds, and I think this was one of them. And teams were kind of happy with it.
Mm.
Yeah, well, only 3 drivers started the race on them, Behrman, Stroll, and Lawson. And you can bet that the rest of the teams were studying their lap times pretty closely to see whether a change to hards from mediums would last the whole race. And on lap 15 is when the leader comes in, goes on to hards. That's Piastri, along with Russell. It looked like the Piastri stop was slow, but I think he was just waiting for Russell to pass, so he didn't get an unsafe release. Shortly before that, though, perhaps the most exciting overtake of the race, Ocon dips a wheel onto the grass to get by Antonelli as they head down into the hairpin at the fastest part of the track. In this, I think I mentioned maybe last episode, that pass that Ocon had at Spa, where he just barely, like an inch away from the wall, heading up to Eau Rouge. Ocon does not seem to care about doing anything dangerous. Lap 16, Norris comes in for hards, and as he exits the pits, finds himself battling with Russell, who was previously behind him. And this is the undercut. So Russell was behind Norris, pitted first, and then when Norris pitted, Russell had been going faster, and so eventually gets by Russell on his now warmed up tires. He sticks it out through the first sector and seals what is effectively second place for the time being, because 2 laps later, Norris gets by Russell with DRS on the front straight into turn 1 and taking back that effective second position.
Yeah, Albon's in first. The first time Williams have led a race in like 14 years or something like that. So,
yeah.
Hey, enjoy it as much as you can.
This was probably my favorite part of the race because, like, hanging over it was this going to be a 2-stop? And if you played the thread out long enough, could you make it a 1-stop? We eventually got a pretty definitive answer, which I think took some of the drama out of the latter half of the race.
Yeah.
But this whole thing where, like, Albon just keeps going and going. Ooh,
Yeah.
Stroll, like, wow, you're really putting in work. Like, this is if these cars all have to stop a second time, these guys are in the catbird seat.
Yeah.
That didn't play out, but I did love the stage of, like, how far can they push it? Like, let's see how this goes.
Albon's done it before, man. He is a tire whisperer. Lap 21, we had been getting some Ferrari radio telling Hamilton to swap places with Leclerc, who had better pace despite that damage to his wing. And lap 21 is when they do swap. And Rob, I think you want to maybe shout this out, but the radio does sound a little contentious based on what we hear.
Yeah.
F1 actually has a good radio video on their YouTube channel, which actually broadcasts the message of Hamilton suggesting the swap because he's, quote, struggling.
So if you watch it, because the thing is, I was actually, when I learned that he did initiate the conversation about I'm going to let Charles through because I'm struggling, I was kind of with Ferrari on this, that like FOM kind of screwed them on this with the production, making it sound like classic Ferrari team orders debacle, the drivers not playing ball. It sounded very messy, very, very contentious for sure in ways that are very familiar. But that is completely transformed if you know that Hamilton basically, started the conversation and was okay in principle with swapping. However, he did take his sweet time about it. And so, like, Drew, did you check out the video? Does it seem like, did he have the idea first, but then he took such a long time that, like, Charles and the team were starting to lose their shit?
Well, it's so the video is basically just about a lot of the team radio messages. They do this kind of after every race. So it's not solely about that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see, but racefans.net typically has like a lap by lap radio breakdown of this kind of stuff. So they might have one. But it to my ear, it sounds like Hamilton suggests it because he says he's struggling, Hamilton. And it looks like Leclerc has the pace. But it's a tricky thing, right? Because the car behind often has trouble closing up due to dirty air, especially when, as in this race, everyone's trying to preserve their tires. So Hamilton wants Leclerc to get close because when Hamilton lets him by, he doesn't want to lose that much time. So he's saying, like, yeah, he can pass when he gets close. And eventually Hamilton says, I'll tell you when we can swap. Mm. So he, theoretically, because he's looking in the mirror and seeing how close Leclerc is. So it does take a few laps, I think, for that reason. But at the end of the day, it was Hamilton's idea. They needed to find out the right time to do it. I think another thing here is that, especially going back to the previous race when Hamilton and his engineer were talking about the K1 button, this is stressful. Everyone is under stress here. And so a lot of times radio messages can come off as very terse and rude when in fact they're juggling a lot of things. They might be racing somebody else. They're trying to just say things really quickly and cut to the chase. And it can come off differently than maybe it was intended.
I mean, probably the meanest I've ever been was somebody was talking too much. I was playing Hell Let Loose and somebody would not shut up on squad chat. And I was like, hang on, sorry. Could you shut the fuck up for 5 seconds? And it just came out because it was like at a certain point, I'm trying to like hear something someone else is saying. I'm trying to read a map, all this stuff, and eventually you're just like, I need to get a word out here, and it's not necessarily what I want, but it is going to be just like dense information. Please stop talking.
Yeah.
Do not tell me this.
In flying, it's called task saturation.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, lap 31.
Navigate, aviate, communicate.
There you go.
Wait, or aviate, navigate, communicate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not a pilot.
Lap 31, the other Haas of Behrman also making moves, getting by Lawson at the hairpin for 16th. Then does the same thing to Doohan. He's got a nice switchback on the hairpin, going wide and then cutting back in. He does that for 15th place on lap 33, and then again,
Which is
on
not
lap
a great
36.
look for Lawson. Just to, tire strategy, sure, but like he's not gobbling
World
up
Bear
the places down here,
Yeah. On World Bear Day, no less.
Oh yeah.
Lap 36, Behrman also gets by Sainz at the hairpin. By the way, he's one of the drivers, Behrman is, that started and went long on hard tires and had just changed to the faster mediums, attempting to make them last for the rest of the race.
He's the only driver on mediums at this stage.
Lap 38, Hamilton comes in for some new tires, one of the few to attempt the two-stop. And if I recall correctly, Verstappen was behind him and catching up. So this was potentially Ferrari saying, look, Verstappen is going to catch us anyway. May as well give Hamilton some fresher tires to try to fight back at the end of the race. Interestingly, they put the hard tires on and not the mediums. Maybe because given the amount of laps remaining, these are the ones that would allow him to push for the longest. Lap 40, another Behrman pass. This time he bides his time behind Gasly until the front straight and then uses DRS to get around the outside of turn 1 into the points. Lap 46, an exasperated Yuki Tsunoda cannot contemplate what might have happened to his front wing. And indeed, a replay shows that going down the front straight, it just breaks. It just snaps.
He's like, how? They're like,
Right.
Your front wing needs to go. You need to pit.
The radio message video on F1's YouTube channel shows Yuki saying like 3 times, like, how did it, I don't understand. I didn't do it.
Look, if it's going to happen in a race, happen. He was in like 14th or something, he's out of the points. There's 10 laps left. Like, sure, whatever. Come last this week, Yuki, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Just goes to show that, you can do all the calculations you want and wind tunnel, etc. But until you are on a track behind other cars, for 2 hours, you're never really going to know. Lap 53, instead of Hamilton catching Verstappen, we have Verstappen catching Leclerc at turn 1. Verstappen going around the outside, cutting back to the outside of turn 3 because the turns switch corners or switch directions, then getting ahead with seemingly better grip, perhaps owing to Leclerc's front wing damage. Because Verstappen's tires were actually 2 laps older at that moment. Leclerc tries to fight back, but Verstappen speeds off, finishing 6 seconds ahead of him. Leclerc's engineer had told him, you're losing time in turn 2. Try not to use the curb.
Nope.
And Leclerc just responded, nope. The other thing happening in the closing stages is that Russell is catching Norris, who's in second. Due to Norris having a brake issue, the pedal, he says, is going long. And his engineer responds, which has got to be chilling. At some point, it will bottom out.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Just use the whole length of the brake, Because F1 brakes, if you've never driven an F1 car, if you've never seen, brakes in racing tend to be wound pretty tight. So you're talking super sensitive at the top of the expression of the piece of metal. But yeah, what was worse for him was every lap it was getting worse. It was like increasing. So, and I mean, honestly, I was kind of interested that he kept talking about it, because I was like, this is some meatball flag talk you're doing here. Like, you're basically saying that your ability to brake is eventually going to, if not fail, then fall off a cliff. Like, That's how I read the radio, his engineer talking back to him. I was like, yep. He was like, okay, yep, sure, yeah, I know, yep, shut up, yep. You
just love those meatballs, Danny.
Exactly.
Fairly suspenseful there, but Norris did manage to hang on. Oscar Piastri wins the race, Lando Norris second, George Russell third, and then Max Verstappen in fourth. On the track, Leclerc fifth, Hamilton sixth, but breaking news, both disqualified from the race. Charles Leclerc, for an underweight car, it weighed 799 kilograms, as did Gasly, so he was also disqualified.
Both of them expecting a safety car, perhaps, or running fuel low just in case,
Maybe. The teams didn't fight it, so,
Slam dunk.
Yeah. They did, if you're wondering, replace Leclerc's front wing before they did the weigh.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. So it wasn't the end plate that did it?
Right, yeah. And Lewis Hamilton disqualified for excessive wear on the skid block.
Yeah, you hate to
so
see
that
it.
the block under the car, hits the ground, but you still have to have a certain amount. You have to have 9 millimeters of thickness at the end of the race, and he had like 8.6 or something, which is the second time this has happened. He got disqualified at the U.S. Grand Prix last year, or 2023.
Yeah.
And I think the same race, Leclerc got disqualified for an underweight car. Or maybe also skid block. Anyway, so they are disqualified, not classified for the race, which moves up Esteban Ocon to fifth.
Amazing.
Yeah. This is also the first time in F1 history that a driver has scored points with a female race engineer.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. Very good.
Yeah.
Congrats, guys.
In sixth, Kimi Antonelli, driver of the day. Even without the DQs, another strong weekend for the rookie, who currently sits fifth in the Drivers' Championship. Apparently, he had pretty bad floor damage for most of the race that the team didn't tell him about. He just kind of got on with it and said, yeah, you know what? It did feel a little weird throughout the race. Alex Albon seventh, Oliver Behrman, the other Haas, double points for Haas in eighth. Gasly would then have finished behind Behrman in 11th, but as we mentioned, he's DQ'd. Instead, this is now ninth place, where Lance Stroll finished, and Carlos Sainz in 10th. And this is why it still matters to fight for position even when you are outside the points. You just never know.
Never know.
Like the last time so many cars were disqualified from a race, it was 2004. When four cars.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 is a lot.
11th, Isaac Hadjar. 12th, Liam Lawson. 13th, Jack Doohan got a 10-second penalty for forcing Hadjar off the track toward the end of the race. 14th, Gabriel Bortoleto. 15th, Nico Hulkenberg. And 16th, Yuki Tsunoda. Fernando Alonso, the sole DNF of the race, and the disqualifications of Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, and Pierre Gasly.
Lance Stroll really keeping that team on his back, you know what I mean?
That's right. Hey, he's, let's see, he's 8th in the Drivers' Championship now.
Right.
Fernando Alonso, I think technically not. Is he not classified? Anyway, let's run down those while we're talking about it. Lando Norris in first, Max Verstappen second in the driver standings, George Russell third. Oscar Piastri, with that win, jumps up 5 spots to 4th place, and this is why I'm keeping my own stats, so I can tell you that. Kimi Antonelli is in 5th, Alex Albon 6th in the driver championship. Esteban Ocon now 7th. He jumped up 6 places from last race. Lance Stroll's in 8th, Lewis Hamilton 9th, and Charles Leclerc 10th. Good thing we had those sprint points, boys.
Yeah.
Nico Hulkenberg 11th, Oliver Behrman 12th, Yuki Tsunoda 13th, Carlos Sainz 14th, and Isaac Hadjar 15th. And we've got Hadjar, Gasly, Lawson, Doohan, Bortoleto, and Alonso all have 0 points. I did learn that this is maybe too much inside baseball, but Pierre Gasly and Isaac Hadjar both have 1 11th place finish because Hadjar didn't finish Australia and Gasly was disqualified from China. So how do you rank them in the Drivers' Championship.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a tricky one. You're
So
going to
I
go
looked
into
at
like the
the
17th.
Because usually when you're tied on points, you say who has the most, first places. No, nothing? Okay, who has the most second places? And you just go down the line. Both of them have only an 11th place finish. So therefore, according to the sporting regulations that I read, Article 7.4, I think it is up to the discretion of the FIA. So they have placed Hadjar ahead of Gasly, I guess because of Gasly's disqualification. Anyway, that's very nerdy. Team standings, McLaren is on top with 78 points. Mercedes is 21 points behind in second. Red Bull Racing, another 21 points behind in third. Williams in fourth. Ferrari in fifth. And Haas in sixth. They jump up 4 spots. Ferrari actually jumped up 2 spots to fifth. Then we've got Aston Martin, Sauber in eighth. Racing Bulls ninth. And Alpine in 10th. I think that Racing Bulls is going to jump up here pretty soon. I can feel it. But that's China. And that is it for the race recap. I completely forgot to take a break.
Yep.
So let's
too.
do that right now, and we will be back with the news. All right. We mentioned some problems that Lawson had with qualifying the race.
Both races?
Yeah.
both race weekends?
Yeah. Let's see. Autosport has compiled here. The New Zealand driver has finished 18th, 20th, and 20th in his 3 qualifying appearances. And his race results, DNF 14th and 12th, don't look much better, especially when you consider the 12th place in China was boosted by 3 post-race disqualifications. So everyone's looking. Everyone's like, well, what is going on here? This is a familiar story. The second Red Bull seat driver is not living up.
I am now at the stage where I think this is Red Bull's problem. I have within myself. I'm not saying Liam Lawson is like the best driver in the world and shouldn't be down there, but there has been enough consistent data on this second Red Bull seat to suggest that they're over prioritizing of Max. Perhaps their need to make this super fidgety car that corresponds to his particular like on the limit for grip intense driving style has just screwed them. I wonder, we talk about Ricciardo being that great second seat. I wonder if what happened after Daniel left was they just kept going in that direction. They kept further and further tuning this car towards Max, which makes sense. And it's gotten increasingly difficult because these are numbers that like if Albon had done this in the year and a half he was in the seat, or if Gasly or whoever it was, it would have been like their numbers look great in comparison to what's happened to Checo at the end of last season and now what's going on with Liam. So yeah, I'm now, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, with the conversations about who could possibly replace Liam. That seat is a poison chalice. Like, stay away from it. Why would anyone want to go to Red Bull right now? It sounds, like I really think this has completely screwed them for the constructors.
So Albin was on the High Performance podcast a year ago. They asked him about this.
Yeah.
And he gave an answer that it's been going around YouTube again because people have been surfacing this, where they ask him about that second Red Bull seat and why is that car so hard to drive. And I can't stress enough like how much like Albin's Williams era, and I think the same thing's going on with Sainz. These drivers are so free to speak their minds compared to drivers at other teams. Team Torque, their first like Williams podcast with Carlos and Albin together, they just start like doing one of the most detailed breakdowns of like a crash that Albin had, driver to driver. It's fascinating stuff. It moved into like must listen territories where sort of get into the behind the scenes stuff. But
that was the big worry with Sainz was would Team Torque be as good this season?
better than ever. It is now genuinely like it's not just like awkwardly compelling. It is now like absolutely like fantastic. Like just drivers talking to drivers.
Okay,
cool.
Excellent.
I'll link it.
But So on high performance, which does very good F1 interviews, we've talked about this. Like it can be a bit of a grind set podcast for sure. So you'll be having a great interview, and then it's like, I want to talk about gut health, as we all know, and so there's a little bit of that. But Albin is asked about this, and he says, so at the start of a season, Max is very quick, and the car is a little bit built for him. And then what happens is, as the season goes along, Max keeps wanting more things from this car, and he's the primary driver, and he's outperforming you. And they start adapting it for that. And you have to change your style to accommodate what is happening with the front end in particular. And that eventually causes you to start losing confidence, because now you're driving outside your comfort zone, because that's what you have to do in order to even come close to matching his performance in a car that's set up for him. But the thing that really struck me was he uses this analogy. He says, I don't know if you play computer games, but like, if you've ever someone playing with their mouse sensitivity set super, super high, where you just like brush it and it goes like flying across the screen. That is how Max's like handling responses from the front end. Like Drew's talked about this, like I think a year or two ago, where like the rumor was that Max liked a pointy car, but it never hit me until like Albin said that, where a lot of drivers like pointy cars. Max is like, the gamer mouse equivalent. These things can be like 16,000 DPI, where it's like, you move it less than a millimeter and it has gone to max input, basically. That is how it feels driving a Red Bull that's like fully developed to Max's tastes, which, that does seem so far outside the normal bounds of how people drive that, and this is Albin talking about a Red Bull that was developed years and years ago.
Right.
To your point, Danny, we are now multiple years of them developing pretty much exclusively with Max in mind. And now nobody can succeed in that seat. Now, the rumor was they tried this year to dial back some of that. And that hasn't worked. Like, they've lost pace, but the car isn't easier to drive. Max's handling of this has been interesting. He said that he thinks that if Liam goes back to Racing Bulls, he'll be faster than Yuki. Right. Basically, it's like that is a faster, easy car and easier to drive. He's like, Liam's good. The car isn't. Now, some of this is Max is also pissed because his car isn't competitive, but I also do think there's a lot of evidence, including from within the team, that, we just haven't created a car that the second driver can really manage. Christian Horner said as much to Bernie Collins, effectively, that, like, they know it's an issue. I don't know if we need Checo to be issued an apology, but I do think, like, looking at this situation, I think you got to get Yuki in there. Like, this is, I don't think this is going to
go
near
my
direction.
boy. don't. Like, I just think, like, at this, like, genuinely, like, I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic about this. If the tide is turning, and if this sort of, like, probably something that was more widely known on the paddock than publicly, that this second car was a bit of a nightmare. Just because obviously it all these other drivers coming out of that system, and the more it's happened, the more I think, the more consistently there's been problems. I just think, like, if Tsunoda wants to have a good career at this stage, I think he should have a fantastic year at RB this year, and then he ends up becoming like a Valtteri Bottas to Mercedes, or like a somebody who was sort of in the middle but doing really well within their team, who then gets a second seat shot at a team that's competitive. And I really don't think that this seat is doing anyone any favors. Like, it took Albon years to recover from it. It took Gasly probably longer to recover from it. Like, it's not the type of thing. I think Tsunoda's temperament in particular would probably not, maybe, from a PR perspective, I think that's a nightmare waiting to happen for Red Bull. Like, that eventually they go and bring him in, and then there's a backlash because people really like Yuki. Like, I don't think Liam's the most loved driver. I like him. I think he's in a really difficult position, but I think some people find him to be arrogant because of because of Drive to Survive, maybe. I feel like he kind of needed to be arrogant to get into that second seat over Daniel Ricciardo, and maybe that's another reason why people don't like that he replaced Ricciardo in some respect. But I really don't think anyone. I don't know anyone who should be making that jump unless it's somebody like a Ocon maybe, or somebody who should get out of the car they're in. Or
I'd love to see Alonso in that seat.
Oh my God, could you imagine the fireworks? Could you imagine the bad PR from that one?
For Christian Horner's part, he is playing the protective team principle here, saying, Liam's a young guy, we've got a duty to look after him, blah blah blah. We're gonna have to look at the data. This is what happens. They say this until they kick you out. Until they decide to kick you out, right? Business as usual until, we decide that we want Yuki, or we want perhaps Franco Colapinto. He is rumored to be not in the seat for Red Bull, but for Racing Bulls. So if they completely boot Lawson from the sport and bump up Yuki, maybe Colapinto goes there. I don't know. That's rumors right now. People saw Helmut Marko going into the Alpine motorhome, and I'll quote from the Autosport article here.
Jesus Christ. We didn't suck the life force out of another young rookie, did he?
It probably wasn't to taste the French coffee.
No. Yeah.
So we'll see. 2 races seems fast to me, especially when I don't think he got Lawson much preseason running in the Red Bull.
He no practice. He doesn't know this track either. Like, at least he knows Japan.
He knows Japan.
There is the argument that, like, even for somebody in a bad car, it's been particularly underwhelming, but
so that's I think genuinely, I actually don't think Red Bull's necessarily handled this too badly yet, and I don't think demoting him like fast would be necessarily the worst thing. If they bounce him out of the sport, I think that would be shitty. But I do not think, like, sometimes you've seen enough real early, the trend is bad, and this car's tough to drive, and he's not rising to it. I suspect, like, the longer you keep him in this state of, like, maybe we'll look at the data, the longer you drag that out, I think the worse it is. I think you have a chance of salvaging this if you make the swap immediately. Yuki has come into the season guns blazing. It's possible they did some sort of, like, maybe this was the long game, right, where they had to get him pissed off and to lock in by passing over him for the promotion, and that's, like, brought out, like, beast mode Yuki, and he's a little sharper this season. Maybe that's what's going on. But the other thing is this: I think because they're in different places in their careers, Yuki, like, the seat might be cursed. Yuki has nowhere else to go. There's not a lot of better seats than the Racing Bulls seat. And that one is getting warm just because he's been in the sport for a while. Honda, we talked about this a week or two ago. Honda's kind of, like, cut him loose, like sink or swim kid. So even though that seat is cursed, the move for him now is to show he can be a Red Bull driver and make that work long enough for one of these other seats at a good team to open up. But that's a few years away. Like, there's not a lot of McLaren's locked up. Ferrari's probably locked up for at least a couple of years. Mercedes seems locked up for a couple of years. There's just not a lot of good places to jump to. Yuki would have to take the promotion, and then he'd have to show out. And I think he could. I think it's a better chance than Liam, who I think probably is correctly in a journeyman phase of his career. And this is off to a bad start. You can still probably salvage the driver development portion of this by moving him back down to Racing Bulls, which seems like a pretty supportive environment these days.
Okay, what I dislike about a lot of this is the silver lining that I can see. The only silver lining that I can see is if they shift Colapinto into that seat, then it takes the heat off our boy Doohan. You know what I mean? Then his seat's not as,
I don't know. Don't they have like 5 reserve drivers just chomping at the bit to get that seat?
I don't know.
Maybe
I'm just playing favorites at this stage.
It may be that by the time this podcast goes up, we have an answer.
I'd be
Rob,
shocked if I don't think they're doing it before Japan. I don't think they're doing it before Japan.
It would be surprising to me. Yes. Rob, curse words
Oh, you want me to do some?
Some
Butts.
examples, please.
Armpit.
Fucked is one of them, which is a word that drew the FIA's ire when a World Rally Championship driver used it in an interview, and fined him, I think, €20,000.
What? That's like a season's salary for one of those folks.
And so then rally drivers started doing the Marshawn Lynch thing of refusing to answer questions and being present, but not speaking to the media. Just being present so they didn't get fined, basically. So that has been things continue to the FIA president continues to become a beloved figure with drivers now across all the series the FIA oversees. And I gather there have been some conversations between like the F1 and the rally drivers trying to like get on top of this issue. The FIA has tried to clarify some of the issues, but they've tried to like stake out as a position that they will, of course, be reasonable about context. So if a driver curses, during a rally in a heated moment, they are not going to fine you. But if you're speaking to the media or if you're using something sort of insulting, then you aren't fulfilling your role as a role model for younger generations. That's the thing they keep trotting out, is that the drivers are role models. They need to put on a good example.
All those kids watching rally interviews live,
Oh, the children love F1 and rally.
Right after Bluey, it comes on.
Yeah, in the support series, they love it all. So this is like, continuing the backdrop of Ben Sulayem kind of pissing off various constituencies within the motorsports world.
Yeah,
that ties in some interesting ways to Autosport had an analysis of how weird this conversation around the V10s has gotten. Nick Tambazis, who is the single seat chief for the FIA, overseeing single racing seat series, the principal of which is F1, was talking about how, well, maybe they'll just scrap the 2026 regulations in a few years, and that'll be when they swing out, they go to V10s.
Right, so abandoning the current hybrid power unit system.
And we
going
talked
back
about
to V10s with what? Synthetic fuel? That's the idea?
Sustainable fuel.
Yes.
Probably also synthetic. Just so good. Just so good for everyone, the world,
win-win.
the planet.
Yeah, because we'll just crush more dinosaurs for millions of years.
We should all be burning it. Yeah. Like, we should have like little like sterno things of synthetic fuel just burning at all times for Mother Earth.
Yeah.
iPhones should be charged off of it, yeah.
Absolutely. So the gloss Autosport put on it was that the V10 thing seems to have been a popularity play, which isn't surprising. We talked about like Sulayem's kind of insecurity, but that he is trying to like win some popularity within the various motorsports clubs that choose the FIA president, because they're starting to turn on him, and there's a rumor that there's going to be like a serious challenge to his FIA presidency coming up soon. Now, the only challenger we've potentially heard about really is Susie Wolff.
Nice.
Remember there was that weird brouhaha with her being investigated for conflict of interest stuff by the FIA, and the Wolffs together like lost their shit about how the investigation details were leaked.
Yeah.
And
it falls into place. Now it makes sense.
There's some theorizing that was sort of a shot across the bows from the FIA. I also wouldn't be surprised if it actually is the sort of thing that pissed people off enough that, well, now they're definitely going to run against you.
Right, yeah.
But the thing is, I wonder if they're talking about someone else, because while Wolff makes a lot of sense and is well respected, that is a case where the conflicts of interest do seem to sort of leap off the, like, I think it would just be tough to say, like, the spouse of a F1 team is now running the FIA. That's not going to feel very, very weird.
Yeah.
If that is the challenger they're talking about, then you're talking about like wild depths of dislike for Sulayem if everyone's sort of on board with that program. My suspicion is maybe there's someone else in the wings that stands a better chance of winning the FIA election. But he has been like, the reaction we have to him seems to have been shared with like a lot of people around the FIA. John Noble wrote a piece at the start of this month over at therace.com talking about like all this stuff, the World Motorsport. There was a World Motorsport Council meeting where he demanded participants like sign an NDA around the contents of that meeting, which the meetings are somewhat like privileged and confidential, but nobody's ever gone to the point of like saying nobody could speak their mind after the meeting. That really pissed off some of Soliam's backers, including he's got that weird thing with the English media, English motorsports clubs. They sort of came out of that where some senior figures in British motorsports came out basically saying they were done with Soliam. They didn't respect him. They didn't trust him.
A bunch of them didn't attend the meeting, right?
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
Rather than sign the NDA. So there's like a lot of stuff that indicates like this V10s thing is this completely fanciful, like wild attempt to be like, I'm a man of the people and I'm going to give the people what they want, which is big engines that go vroom.
We're bringing the pit girls back, just like something that's real.
Dude, we are this close to that.
I know,
do you want Susie Wolf to come be the face of the FAA?
Right.
Or do you want grid girls?
Oh, God. Exactly, yeah. Oh, no. Is the woke
that is
argument
the prevailing wind of our time.
Yeah, oh, God.
Welcome, Andrew Tate, the Grand Marshal of this year's Miami Grand Prix.
Jesus Christ. Do you think they're talking about V10s on Signal?
Just engine emojis.
Yes.
Checkered flag.
Make F1 great. Oh.
But yeah, so like, again, we live in the era of like this type of loser, narcissistic loser. But
Absolutely.
this V10s things of a piece, the Autosport take on a lot of this reaction is that everyone is basically trying to prevent an open breach from happening. And so they're entertaining the idea. But the notion that the teams, and particularly the manufacturers, are actually going to embrace V10s after investing all this money in engines that we are less than a year from those deploying, that's ridiculous. Yeah. That is just that has to be a non-starter. But it is a thing that he keeps pushing, and everyone's like sort of entertaining the notion rather than say this guy's in over his head. It's time to give him the hook. But everything suggests there's growing discontent. A lot's going to come down to this election, where it seems like it's really important they get him out, or it's going to be a situation where now you have a toxic, incompetent shithead, fully empowered to do what he wants. And that could spell bad things for the future of the FIA.
Well, from one bummer to another. Danny, last story here, a sad one.
Yeah, so we lost Eddie Jordan. It was I think it was right after we published the podcast. Actually, the news broke. And if you're new to watching F1, there's a good chance you didn't really interact with him much at all. He was sort of predominantly doing TV personality stuff for the past decade and a half. Race analysis and stuff like that. But even in that, he had drifted away. He was like part of, was it? I don't even remember. It was BBC's, I guess, back in the day. Their broadcasting stuff. Back in December, it became known, I think his family released news that he had a fairly aggressive form of colon cancer. And ultimately that's what took his life about a week ago. And yeah, Eddie Jordan is a big jovial figure in F1, a massive figure in Irish motorsports. Obviously, we're a very small island, and the fact that we had a Formula One team was pretty crazy growing up home. The fact that we had an F1 team, and also there was a Northern Irish driver as well, was
the original Celtic Tiger.
Exactly right. Around that era, so a very hopeful sort of time in the country where we were coming out of decades of pretty, abject poverty post-war for sure, and the nasty 80s and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, he would have grown up in Dublin during that period. I think he was a bank teller for a while. He spent some time on one of the Channel Islands and went go-karting in his early 20s, and then that's what sort of kicked him into trying to do some go-karting when he arrived back home in Dublin. I think he worked in Mullingar out in Westmeath in a bank. And then, so started his love affair with racing, and he did have a career in open wheel racing, but he was sort of rubbing shoulders with a lot of the drivers who go on to be in F1. But if you ever saw the guy talk, you'd kind of get why he should be a owner of a team. You know, he's sort of like that wheeler dealer. Like if we're saying Bernie Eccleston is like what is neutral evil or bad, I don't know,
chaotic evil,
chaotic evil, maybe lawful evil for sure. Then Eddie Jordan was chaotic good. I think he was
flamboyant.
Yeah, flamboyant. Always wore interesting stuff. I mean, the
Great
Jordan
liveries.
the Jordan car was like when he started. Jordan was just this like, what do you call it? Hot yellow, just like this super vibrant. They were painting like, hornets and sharks on the front nose of
the yellow Jordan is like a livery that lives rent free in my head. I remember Ralph Schumacher and the yellow Jordan, just incredible look. Yellow sports cars look awesome. I can't believe we've only gotten the one team. Renault flirted with it a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the yellow Jordan looks incredible.
It's wild how, like, I'd say the only other car in the modern era that has like an iconic look maybe is the Red Bull, because they were able to incorporate their logo into it in some way, and it sort of, what that looks like. But like, even so, like like the yellow of Jordan was like super, like visually interesting, and everything about the car. Like it was a car that, he was always, this was an independent Formula One team in an era where there was a lot of Formula One teams, so you had to like qualify for races, and it was difficult to keep it up. And they talked about when they gave Schumacher his first ride, and then he got instantly nicked by Benetton, it was, I'm guessing. What was it? The famous line was said to him, "Welcome to the Piranha Club," just about how brutal the business realities of operating in Formula One were. But Jordan had a bunch of great drivers go through them, had some race wins. I remember both the hoorah when the English national anthem was played the first time Jordan won. Because and this is like the late 90s, so like boy. We're still not, the Good Friday Agreement is in, we're still in that era. So I think it was Spa, they played the English national anthem because they just didn't have the Irish national anthem. Like, why would
close enough?
Why would you have that tape? Exactly. Yeah, that's close enough. Let's just play that one. And then their next race, they won posthumously because it was a DQ in first, and then they ended up winning, getting the trophy at the next race. But I think Jordan had 4 F1 wins, if I'm right, and on the third one they did play the Irish national anthem, and it's a clip over the years I've gone back and watched a few times, because we're small country. Whenever anyone in any sport did well, it would become everyone's favorite new sport. You know what I mean? Like boxing would get really big, and we were good at boxing. Italian 90, USA 94 in the World Cups.
Do people like Conor McGregor yet? Do people realize
So interestingly, like when McGregor was kicking off, there was this big explosion of there was big explosion of MMA stuff all around the world, right? Just people trying jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. But yeah, back home his popularity is in the gutter. Yeah, especially now that he's trying to do this populist, become the Irish president thing.
Oh, you mean McGregor? Okay.
McGregor, yeah, because that's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Just not. We're not talking about Jordan.
No. Opposite ends of the. I know he's also a convicted sex offender, so
the tributes that Sky did to Jordan, I thought were very touching. Brundle was so overcome talking about his affection for Eddie.
Yeah.
So was the whole broadcast. He
drove for him.
A beloved figure.
Yeah, he drove for him and drove against him. They would have been, I think, British Formula 3 maybe. They were on the same grids, and then also, he drove for Jordan.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Pointing out that Jordan started in 1991 as a brand new team and became Midland Spiker Force India Racing Point, and now Aston Martin. So they're still in the league.
Yeah, and they did. They had a nice little livery. They had a shamrock and a message for him on the side of the car, and
That was
yeah,
nice.
it feels like a little bit of my childhood dying a bit. I think a
Yeah.
lot of old F1 fans and certainly Irish F1 fans. It was a tough bit of news to hear for sure, especially because he just seemed to like, I don't know, like there's a lot of people. Everyone seemed to have a story with him. You know what I mean? Like he was just like this larger than life lunatic. You know, the shirts on BBC was always the thing. Like, what crazy shirt is he going to wear next during the
always pick him out,
broadcast?
that's
And
true.
yeah, and he never held his tongue. And you know, sometimes he would say stuff that people didn't really agree. Not edgy or anything. I'm just saying sometimes he had opinions that were sort of a little bit, you know, on the edge as well. But he seemed to be loved by everyone and well respected and yeah, he managed to keep an independent team running in Formula One for a long time and not make a load of enemies. So I think yeah, he was a great representative for Formula One and certainly for Irish sports, and yeah, may he rest in peace.
Well said. Well, if you'd like to join the fantasy sports, you can do so using the link to our fantasy league in the show notes. I'm going to
You could be the next Eddie Jordan in Fantasyland.
the top 3 from the weekend. In third place, Lemons Are Neat.
They are.
In second place, Piastri's Lamingtons. Both those teams, the same. Actually, 2, 3, and 4 are all from the same person, Dennis. Dennis's teams, amazing.
Is the other one also named something with lemons or lambings or
That's number 4 is Budget Bono.
Budget Bono? Wow.
So I guess
Bono
that's
is Budget
the U2
Bono.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And number 1, Go Gadget Box from the Chinese Grand Prix. But overall, here are our top 3 from both races combined. In number 3, Engine Mode Gone. You hate to see it. And then a tie for first, Lando Several Wins, parentheses please, and A Newy Day.
A Newey day.
And I just like to point
Eddie
out,
Jordan also Adrian Newey's manager.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out, in 7th place overall, my team rhymes with orange.
Really? You're
You
seventh?
very much, yes. Wow. My Williams Ascendancy team, 1,245th.
Okay.
Not doing so hot.
Williams Ascendancy team. Nice.
I might have the most DNFs or disqualifications possible.
Oh.
It's been an absolute nightmare. I thought my Ferraris had done well.
You had both
this
Ferraris
week.
and Gasly?
Yeah, exactly. I doing last week. It's been a bad.
Oh, good.
It's been a bad time.
Yeah, Lawson, Hadjar. Yeah, great. All right. You can also send us an email, shift.fmpodcast@gmail.com or info.cool/emails. You can also hit us up on the socials, and that's where we are around the internet. Do you want to take it around the world?
Let's
Danny?
race around the world. Yeah.
All right, racing is in full swing these days. The Craftsman trucks are at Martinsville Speedway in Martinsville, Virginia for the Boys and Girls Club of the Blue Ridge 200. MotoGP is at the Circuit of the Americas this weekend in Austin, Texas. The World Superbike Championship is at Autodromo Internacional do Algarve in Portugal.
Ooh, in the south. Beautiful.
The NASCAR Xfinity Series is also at Martinsville for the Marine Corps 250.
Hoo-ha.
That's
Is that what they say?
that's that thing. That's the Army. The NHRA is at the Auto Club Raceway at Pomona, California for the Lucas Oil Winter Nationals. One word, Winter Nationals.
It's not winter anymore. Come on. It's late March.
And we got NASCAR. Also at Martinsville Speedway. Hook up the propane because it's the Cookout 400.
Oh, Lord.
That's right. Well, what do you know? No Formula One this weekend. To give everyone a break here. That's what's going on this weekend. Danny, what happened this day in the past?
In the past, Nigel Mansell had the honor of being the last driver to be personally selected by Enzo Ferrari himself. He signed up for the 1989 season, but winter testing showed the car's new electronic gearbox to be chronically unreliable. Mansell was so convinced the car would not last the distance at the first race in Brazil on this day that he booked a flight home that left halfway through the race. That's outrageous. He surprised everyone, not least himself, by winning from 6th on the grid. So,
That's good.
Nigel Mansell,
That's
not
good.
to be taken, don't take his advice. Not a great fortune cookie maker. After just one dismal showing at the Australian Grand Prix, where both cars failed to qualify and were some 11 seconds off the pace, today in 1997, the Lola team announced that they were pulling out of Formula One. It was a sorry end for the team, which had such a proud heritage of racing in other formulae and for supplying other F1 teams with chassis. The fallout from the F1 debacle led the company into administration shortly afterwards. Sorry, Lola. We barely knew you. 11 seconds off the pace is remarkable. I think I could do that on foot.
All right, final thoughts, gentlemen. Danny, ahead of, I guess, our next week will be our I've deleted the race calendar.
Oh,
show.
cool. Excellent.
Yes.
We have enough
pre-Japan show.
We've got
of course.
some Drive to Survive bonus pods coming up, of
That's
course.
right. That's right.
I think anyone who is doing well in the fantasy league is a witch who is clearly communing with the future, and we should put them to the stake or to the fire. We should see if they can swim real good. That's what we should do. I don't trust it. If you're winning fantasy this league, you're bad at fantasy. Like there's no one's 4D chess in this.
All the good picks are getting killed.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's totally random. You don't even know when a race is finished if most of your team is going to get.
I don't know. I feel like going, all in on McLaren was a pretty smart move.
Yeah, but maybe one of them will, curse and be sent to Siberia. You don't know.
It's true. Final thoughts, Rob.
Does Nicholas Latifi count as someone whose full career existed within the bounds of Drive to Survive?
I think so.
How many years though? Because I feel like it doesn't count if they just came in.
I think he was there for like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, I think yeah.
It's a decent run.
That might be it.
Now, admittedly, that was there entirely due to sponsorship, but I still think he was there. Like
3 seasons.
He had
2020, 2021, and 2022.
Nicholas Latifi.
That's a career, baby.
Yeah.
Especially in F1.
What about Russian oil magnates or pet?
That's right.
I wonder, but so is that 2 years?
Yeah, I think that's only 2.
Is it 1?
Why can't I remember his name?
Mazepin.
Nikita Mazepin. Thank you.
I feel like he was only there for like 2 years.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think
feel
it's
like
1.
that
2021. That's it.
That doesn't
Oh,
feel
was
like
it 1 year?
Because he was gonna race for 22, but then Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think like that's a one and done. I don't think it's a career.
Yeah.
Oh,
doesn't
and we
count.
were talking about him the season prior because he had groped a woman,
Yes.
and then
He
they
was-
were like, "Yeah, he can still race in F1."
He was dead to rights. It took a massive war for him to get kicked out of this sport. Latifi, I think Latifi might be the one. Also, Latifi not getting much airtime on Drive to Survive anyway.
True.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you would like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the early ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all